Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with Service to Mystic Falls, Virginia. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that our flight might be delayed a little bit today as we have to separately invite every vampire on our flight before they can enter the aircraft.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Jeff Kurbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How you boys doing today?
That was one of my favorites so far. I love that
one. Max, how are you?
I am delightful. I found my 2009 iPod, and apparently they used it for today's episode, so I'm really excited to get into that.
I wrote down the exact same notes.
I did write, Max has thoughts about this music, and they're positive.
Max
in my
always
notes.
has thoughts on the music cues.
Not all of them are positive, though. Well, folks, if you do not recognize the name Mystic Falls, Virginia, this week we are taking a fan request and diving in to the Vampire Diaries, which started in 2009, back in our prime in high school. I don't want to say our prime, but back in our prime high school days. Well,
we're actually doing this to celebrate the start of baseball season, because as we know from the Twilight movies, vampires invented the game.
Oh, I thought we were doing this episode because we're a few weeks out from the new Vampire Weekend record.
We're doing it for so many reasons. We're doing Vampire Diaries for so many reasons.
Well, Max, for those who are joining us for baseball reasons, maybe for Vampire Weekend reasons, maybe they just randomly found us. Do you mind telling folks what this podcast is all about?
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn a little bit more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if we think they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes from wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
And Rich, what is your question of the week?
Yet another reason for people to watch on YouTube or on Spotify. We're just making faces at each other now. All right, so obviously everything in this show takes place within the vampire canon. All sorts of rules that you're very familiar with.
Hold on, the vampires have a cannon?
That's an entirely new ability I didn't know about.
Yeah, you can only use it at night, though, so what are they going to shoot at? All right, so obviously that includes things like, you can only be killed by, like, driving a wooden stake through their heart. They can't be shown a cross or garlic or anything like that. They need to be invited inside the house. So I would love to know, if you could add one new rule to vampire lore, what would it be?
Max, I'm curious, do you have a rule that is top of mind for you?
Yeah, so in a lot of these universes, the vampires do, coexist amongst humans, although in the shadows. And they hold on to these vampire mansions for hundreds and hundreds of years. So if you're a vampire, you need to notify the city so you have to pay estate taxes.
I do genuinely love that so much.
Yeah, vampires are coasting on rent control and no estate taxes, and they need to pay their fair share for these giant vampire mansions they live in.
Well, for myself, I thought a little bit sillier than that. Although some vampires, seemingly, depending on our universe, can fly, I think that, vampires have to be sanctioned off to only one or two types of airlines, and that is vampires have to fly budget airlines. They're only allowed to fly budget airlines. So, Spirit...
Are you saying the undead must fly Spirit?
Spirit, Allegiant, Frontier, you have vampires added on, and that really might be tempting for some people to fly on those airlines. And
I only have allegiance to one.
God damn it.
Rich, what about yourself?
Frontier. Okay. So for me, I have to go, I guess a little bit tied to Twilight movies, but if you encounter a werewolf, you have to dance battle on site to figure out whose territory it's going to be. Because obviously they don't get along very well. I think it would lead to a lot less like white people casting in vampire shows too. So that sounds pretty fun. But I want to see him. I want to see him boogie down to see who wins. Who wins the park that they're at or whatever.
Yeah, whatever happened to my Transylvania twist? vampires have been asking this question.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for that delightful question of the week. Let's dive into a little bit more of the Vampire Diaries and start off with a quick synopsis. Two vampire brothers are obsessed with the same beautiful girl in a small town where supernatural beings live in secret. Sure. Also,
which we don't get at all in this pilot.
How do I become a vampire brother to someone that I know is a question, because I know how you become an in-law. I know how you're a blood relative.
Jeff, I think you become a vampire brother when you have sex with the same person. Is that?
You made this sound like a buddy comedy, and I'm intrigued.
Oh, Max, you didn't watch it either?
Max, how did this show... If you can't tell me how you become a vampire brother, how did the show get made?
Today we are talking about the pilot of the Vampire Diaries, which originally aired on September 10th, 2009 on the CW. And we're going to be talking about the show's creators today. We're going to be talking about Julie Plec and Kevin Williamson. So Vampire Diaries is based on the New York Times bestseller series of books by the same name, written by author L.J. Smith. These books were actually commissioned by Alloy Entertainment back in 1990, a company we talked about before on this podcast. Alloy is a book packaging division of Warner Brothers Television, who develop novels and then hire writers with the goal of turning them into films and TV shows. Alloy's developed many of these projects, including Pretty Little Liars, Gossip Girl, and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants over the years. Jeff, you have a question?
So one of the things when I watch this, I feel like the instant thing that a lot of people hear when they're like 2000s book vampire into show is this is Twilight influence, which I feel like you're going to talk about a little bit, Max, but it sounds like this is more influenced by something like Interview with a Vampire, which was a pretty big hit movie back in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like these books came out years before the Stephenie Meyer Twilight series, but because of Twilight's influence and, things that came after this book series too, things like, Buffy and Angel, and then the Twilight movie first coming out in 2008, like that kind of allowed this earlier book series to get a second life in a way and then find a mainstream audience. So getting into the team now, Julie Plec originally worked on developing the series for TV. She serves as a producer and assistant to director Wes Craven on Scream 2, written by Kevin Williamson, and as a writer-producer on Kyle XY. Plec urges Williamson to read these books, hoping to bring him onto production and pen the pilot. Williamson, of course, being a TV PL vet as the creator of Dawson's Creek, as well as the writer of 90s horror classic Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Ooh.
Williamson is resistant at first because the concept of brooding high school teenage vampires is very similar to Twilight, which is just dominating pop culture at this time. But he sees an angle into something different by focusing on the small town, its history, and that darkness that sort of lurks below the surface in suburbia. Essentially, we're going to focus less on vampires and more about like how the town is affected by what's going on here. Basically, if Twilight was just about like politics in Forks, Washington. So the pilot was greenlit in February of 2009 and ordered a series. And just after its premiere, given a full 22 episode season order, it's going to go on to get a whole lot more of those throughout its run. And I'm excited to dive into today's episode.
I would like to pitch the show called Forks, where we just focus on Forks, Washington.
Forks and Recreation.
Oh my god. Yes, I'm in. Amy Poehler, give me a call. We got an idea. Well, Max, thank you for the background on this show. And, boys, I thought I was having deja vu when I started watching this pilot, because the way that it starts is eerily similar to the other vampire show that we have done on this pilot with True Blood, where we see
True Blood.
Hanging with Mr. Cooper. No, it's where we have this
upside down because he's a bat.
Yeah, we have this attractive young couple that is. We have this attractive young couple. I'm getting us back on the rails. That we see driving through the darkness in the woods of an unknown location. But the big difference in this one is this show does not start off with a hand job to keep one person awake. Instead, we see a man get hit by a car.
Yeah, 'cause it's for kids.
Yeah, which is so much more for kids.
Hey, look, a hand job doesn't have a lot of place outside of high school anyways.
And it's so interesting, Max, sometimes when you bring up like who was involved and their previous background before doing this show, you get those horror elements instantly with something nefarious is up, because we see two people just straight up get murdered. Once again, this is a kid show. So I'm curious, did you guys have the same deja vu that I did, or were you instantly captured and the 5-minute rule went into place and you said, give me a little bit more of this?
Definite deja vu, just between like the foggy back road, speeding, through the woods of the truck. It's really hard to not draw that comparison if you've seen both these shows before. And much like vampires are also lanky, pale, European descendants, James Blunt catches some real strays in the cold open of this pilot.
James Blunt gets roasted while they're playing Silver Sun Pickups. This would have really resonated with me in 2009.
I did just in my mind, in the back of my mind, when you see that man get out of that car and be like, I'm gonna check, I had that, like, it's a trap meme.
Don't do that. Don't get out to check the thing in the fog. Like we've seen this happen.
I just want to say, on behalf of the podcast, we're not advocating for hit and runs, but if you live in a place called Mystic Falls, maybe don't do that.
There should be something catchy. We need something catchy for people who hit someone, and it's called like hit, call, wait patiently, wait for the police to take your statement, then drive off very carefully.
And I know that these books were written in, 1990, like the early 90s. I don't know what the order of book to series is entirely, or how much they're drawing from, or how to a T it is, but that's also how I Know What You Did Last Summer begins by Kevin Williamson, where it's hitting a mysterious stranger on a dark, windy road, and then that's how like the horror begins. He just loves committing vehicular manslaughter.
Play the greatest hits each and every time.
What are you trying to tell us, Kevin Williamson?
I have this movie about mummies that takes place in the like 2000 BC, but I'm figuring out. I think I know how to start it.
Yeah, but they would know that you did it because the toilet paper is dragging from your axle.
Like you're leaving an airplane bathroom.
So after this, this shock, we see the man's murder is very apparent. The woman, we find out that this mysterious figure can fly, supposedly. And then we just get our cut to the intro scene of the Vampire Diaries. I did forget to mention, we got a great little narration at the beginning of this show that I have written down. For over a century, I was living in the shadows, alone in the world until now. I am a vampire. And this
Jeff,
is my story.
You are putting way more enthusiasm and inflection into your version of that reading than they did.
Yeah, well, look, I'm sorry, Max. I'm not
they can't
dead.
Die. They're not going to be.
I'm not dead. I can't read this like a dead person. I'm so sorry about that. Let's talk about one of the themes that happened in the show that's wild. Is we have not one, but two narrators going at the same damn time in this show. We have two people. We have two diaries. It's not just a vampire's diary. It's also our Nina Dobrev's diary as well.
Look, it's Vampire Diaries plural. It's not the Vampire Diary.
Man, chef's kiss to the first line after the cold open of Vampire Diaries being "Dear Diary." I was pointing at the screen like, that's the diary.
That's the one. That's the one they're talking about.
I wrote it in all caps. They're literally writing in the diaries, the Vampire Diaries.
So what did we think of this opening scene? Like, we definitely need some exposition about, like, who our main character is in this instance, played by Nina Dobrev. And, we find out a lot in a very little amount of time. As far as Nina Dobrev plays Elena. Elena is I don't even know if this is an appropriate way to say it. She is newly an orphan, not trying to be like, but like both of her parents died. We don't know how at this point in time. And she's now living with her aunt and her younger brother.
Her aunt, who also appears to be a high schooler.
Yes, her aunt, who is dressed younger than she is, and they all have a caffeine addiction. Because, yeah, why not make sure that a 16-year-old, 20-year-old is just slopping down that coffee?
My bone to pick with this opening scene of getting ready for that first day of school is that no 16-year-old in the suburbs is just drinking black coffee in their kitchen. They are getting the sweetest Starbucks Frappuccino for their caffeine fix. This is a caramel macchiato girl to a T. There is no way that she's just drinking black coffee.
Yeah,
there's no way.
She's not a long haul trucker. Let's just throw that out there.
Yeah, just living on Reds and vitamin C and caffeine.
It's super interesting, though. We see this. Elena has a ride to school. We start getting like these small little glimpses of the town that we're in. It's very like, what if we had Sleepy Hollows or like old time New England, but we threw it in Virginia? And
Jeff, it's one of the oldest states in the Union.
You know what? No, I refuse. They wanted to film this in Massachusetts and were told no.
The first colonies in this country were in Virginia. It's not some mysterious transplant.
But like one of the other characters, like as far as meeting characters, we've met Elena, we've met her brother, we meet Bonnie, who just starts being off. In our synopsis, right, we talked about supernatural beings. She's like, oh yeah, my grandma says I'm psychic. That kooky bitch. Like, there's no way that I'm psychic. It's just like, there's a lot of stuff that's just like sort of thrown at the wall, and we're like, let's see what sticks and what people keep with them and what people don't keep with them.
I call it bad gardening, where you just take a fistful of seeds and throw it out there, and you're like, this will become something, fuck it.
We also meet so many people within the first 5 minutes of this pilot. We have Bonnie. We have Elena. We have Elena's brother. We have her aunt. We have Vicky, who her brother hooked up with or is providing drugs to. One of those two things.
It can be both.
You can do both. You can do two things. And then we have that girl's boyfriend. We also have the blonde girl whose name I don't remember. I think it's Caroline. And then on top of that, we get introduced to this mysterious figure wearing the most 2009 jeans I have ever seen in my life by the name of Stefan. Stefan, is it Stefan or is it Steven? And they just really... Stefan? Yeah, Stefan Curry.
Stefan Salvatore, which is, I think, like Italian and Swedish, which is it's quite a choice.
Stephen Curry is in this pilot, and he plays a vampire. No, we get this brooding character, and rather than taking the Twilight approach of like, oh, is he a vampire? Is he not? They're just straight up like, nope, he's a vampire. He starts showing off all these fancy skills that he's got, like mesmerizing the school administrator.
I think they do that same power in Twilight too. I think that's like an overlap of like the vampire lore between those, where you could just like tell them to do things and they do it.
It's a big part of what we do in the shadows too. That's like they use that plot element quite a bit.
And using it on just like an hourly employee school administrator, like that lady does not have time for your bullshits.
No, you can't hypnotize people in the union. There's rules against that.
So what were some of the other things that you got from this school scene? Because one of the things that I noticed is many of our actors are like 20. Like I looked it up and I was just like, Nina Dobrev is 20 when she films this. So they got pretty close.
It's not like 35-year-olds trying to play high school students.
Kat Graham is also 20 when they film this. Like Nina Dobrev's.
That's not egregious though. That's close.
We've come so far in the casting for high schoolers community.
There's one thing that is a consistency in this show though, is that vampires are much older. The people who were cast as vampires are much older than the people who were cast as just our normal folks.
Yeah, they're like 180. Didn't you? Pay attention, Jeff.
Well, Paul Wesley, who plays Stefan, is 26 at the time of filming this pilot. Which is like that is a difference. A 22 or 26-year-old, that is a leap. And
someone who we'll get to a little bit later is 31.
Ooh.
Yes, we do. So one thing that I forgot to get to. Did y'all catch Bonnie's predictions of why she thinks she might be psychic?
Oh, she predicted that Obama was going to become president and that Heath Ledger was going to die.
But did you catch the third one, which is Florida is going to break off the United States and become a bunch of little separate islands, which, you know what?
Kinda.
Bonnie,
metaphorically, sure.
Now, how would that impact Senate and House seats?
Well, it's an island, so they lose all their all their power.
You know what? They become Puerto Rico. They
so
basically
it would
Puerto
just
Rico
be
also.
electoral votes. It'd be like a Guam situation.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that we noticed in high school, because it's very apparent that Stefan is there for one person and one person only, and that is Elena. And we have that high school scene of like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, he's different than everyone else, and why is he so striking? And like, I need to know everything about him.
Why does he look 10 years older than everyone else in my class?
How many years was he held back?
So they don't explain at all why he can go out in the daytime, right?
Like, as at this point, no, but they do later, which I actually do appreciate, because I was
in the series or in the episode.
In
this episode, they actually explain
Okay,
that. Brought to you by Rich's Narcolepsy Corner. Rich missing a little bit.
I'll have you know, I was on Adderall when I watched this.
I think let's just, as long as we're laying out vampire rules and powers, let's just say it. You know how male jewelry is really trending in 2024, Rich?
Yeah.
So that big clunky ring allows the vampires to be out in the daytime. If they lose the ring, then they turn to dust when they get hit with sunlight.
Yeah, sounds like a big clunky plot hole to me.
So there's a couple of other things that happen. Did you all like the male bathroom scene that was our meet cute? Or that led to our meet cute?
Oh, you mean the scripted Dare ad?
Stoner talk is something that I am only going to say to you two after you take an edible of, what is that stoner talk?
Yeah, Elena had a real big hole to dig herself out of after she used the phrase ruin your buzz to her little brother.
Also, like, what? Why are they using the phrase stoned for something that's like very clearly not weed? Like, he's dealing pills. He has to. It's the pills, right? He's on pills.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely he's stealing prescription pills from someone or somewhere, and like, I mean, not technically good. Let's just be honest. But as soon as I saw the eye drops going in the eye, like in this artistic style, I was like, oh, so we're supposed to be implying that he's really high right now.
But yeah, this turns into full family ad council, drugs are going to ruin your life. Like the commercial of when the two people used to be deflated on the couch.
Oh yeah. I think that was like a body horror trigger for almost everyone in our generation.
So after this scene, this Dare ad that we were not invited to, we get Stefan and Elena meeting for the first time because, oh, she's so kooky and odd because she comes out of the men's bathroom. Why was she in there in the first place? And she can't seem to describe why. But like, what I guess what I'm getting to is, what do you think of the initial chemistry between these two actors? Because
disturbing. like she can't talk and he's just staring at her. Like, it's not a healthy chemistry that they have. I don't think people actually want that. He's a brooding hot teenager, but good
she's
God.
Awkward and he's big, and that's about the extent of what we get so far.
It's like the woman that owns Clifford.
And like after this initial high school, meet everyone, get to know the stereotypes, we see Elena's character go into a cemetery to visit her parents, and then we see the mysterious fog we saw in our first scene. We see a crow a mysterious figure, and then we get a little bit more dialogue. And Rich, it is time to welcome you back to TV Pilot's License Theater. Yes,
Yeah.
that is correct. There was a scene that happened that I immediately texted Max and said, you want to put your acting hat back on and do a little scene work with me.
You damn
So-
right.
Acting's all in the hat.
Yeah, it's all about those hats. The bigger the hat, the better the actor. That's why mimes always wear hats.
That's why we all love Jesse Plemons in Killers of the Flower Moon, because he shows up wearing that giant hat on the doorstep.
Incredible hat work.
So Max will be playing the role of Stefan, and I will be playing the role of Elena. No, I will not be getting too much into character.
And I will be playing the role of Amused.
This is the first time we've done a TVPL theater where I've actually seen the script ahead of doing it. So, so we're off to a good start, folks.
All right, Max, start us off.
You okay?
Were you following me?
No, I saw you fall.
And you just happened to be hanging out in a cemetery?
I'm visiting. I have family here.
Oh, wow. Tactless. I'm sorry, it's the fog. It's making me foggy. And then back there was this bird, and it was all very Hitchcock for a second. That is the Bird movie, right? The Hitchcock. I'm Elena.
I'm
Wow.
Stefan.
Incredible WGA words are flying in.
I know. We have history together.
And English. And French.
Right. And scene. I am going to say, with that, genuinely, there was some writing in the show that I very much enjoyed. And
Totally.
yeah, and that we have history together and English and French. I was just like, yep, that's good rom-com writing right there. And I'm a sucker for a good rom-com, and you immediately had me like in at that moment.
This really captures the Pretty Little Liars and like Riverside, we're teens and we're always afraid feel to every conversation that happens in the pilot. And I don't think there's more to the acting choices than that for this entire show, really.
Well, it's also, we have to recognize what network this was on, right? Like, this was a CW staple. And, like, if we think about things that CW does, it's really good-looking people on the screen, flirting with each other, no matter what is happening on the screen. Like, that is
exciting
what,
concepts and C- scripts.
Good
But, like-
God, the fog is making me foggy though. Like that's unforgivable. Scream is one of the sharpest written scripts of
Yeah.
any genre in the last 30 years, and to have that lead into the fog is making me foggy.
Oh boy.
So, Max, I have to ask, we sort of alluded to this soundtrack of this episode, and there is a banger that just appears immediately in this scene in the cemetery with One Republic Say. I'm curious, were you just like, yes, I am here for this song? Yes, I suddenly remember that I'm a little bit moodier, I'm a little bit more upset, but also I'm a little bit excited about One
I'm
Republic.
thinking about how people became so obsessed with the music from Saltburn and how it represented like 2007, 2008 so well. And this is so specifically 2009. I mean, just going through what we have on the first day of school, there's a record drop from the Raconteurs,
Yep.
Jack White's other band after the White Stripes. You've got One Republic. Coming up right after this, we get a back-to-back transitioned music cue of Katy Perry into MGMT, like perfect segued in. We get a cover of Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush.
Really good.
Yeah, that was
By
awesome.
Placebo. Placebo's the one exemption to like this 2009 rule. We get the Fray in here, the official TV band of 2009. There's Silver Sun Pickups is in here.
Yep.
This is
White Lies.
Yeah, White Lies. This is just like, I don't know, 4:30 p.m. at Lollapalooza core. This is like K-Rock core. This is some real grocery store music. I absolutely love it. But yeah, it's so reminiscent of a time and place. All the props in the world to whoever did like the A&R and all the music licensing for this show, because there are bangers in this pilot. Bangers, baby.
It feels OC related. It feels like there's so many songs in this, and I don't know if it's harder or more expensive to get licensing right now, but like maybe that's the only reason we have like where you have to like have one really memorable needle drop, which is, you know, Metallica and Stranger Things, Kate Bush and Stranger Things, Taylor Swift and the Bear, that kind of stuff. Like,
but even more so, this show feels like it was tailored to be sold by the episode on iTunes for $1.99 a pop.
Yeah, like I think that we were in an era where the soundtrack was very important to the success of a show in some instances, where like, yeah, maybe the dialogue isn't the best in some circumstances, but like, hey, One Republic is on in the background, and like, yeah, that's gonna catch my attention for sure.
I want you to get me a more 2009 picture than a girl wearing leggings under a jean skirt while One Republic plays.
I can't, and I'm sorry, and it's too late to apologize.
Oh!
So
I'm just gonna stop and stare.
So after our brooding teenager scene that we get,
all 45 minutes of it?
Brooding teenager scene in a graveyard where there's a meet cute for the second time.
More specific.
We get a little bit of a glimpse into what I think that I'm curious for the two of you. We go to a diner or like a restaurant that like just happens to be like this town hot spot for the high schoolers. Did this exist for either of you? Like a place that all the high schoolers went for like lunch, maybe breakfast, or maybe even dinner?
This implies that they have money to spend. We loitered in a CVS parking lot next to a park.
Yeah, facts. I feel like the one place that we all congregated was the hookah bar that didn't card us.
So, like, there was a diner that was, like, across the street from my high school that we went for breakfast sometimes before school, or, like, if we had weekend practice. So, like, there was a small part of me that was like, oh, yeah, this is, like, slightly reminiscent, but we're not going there at night. Like, this is not, like, hey, but none of us also lived in, like, super small towns growing up. Like,
Jeff went to Riverside High, though.
Yeah, I know.
This is important, though. We are
Riverdale
as a
High.
Culture, we're losing third spaces, and Vampire Diaries just makes me reminiscent of a time where you had these, communal areas that you could go and meet up that weren't working your home. Americans are interacting with each other.
I literally
less and less.
I wrote down third spaces. This is what's missing right now.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I meet so many people on the metaverse. That's my third space.
Oh, God. Jeff's impending bankruptcy incoming.
But like a little bit more of an understanding. But there's one consistent theme with Steven that seems to be very, very clear. And like there's this infatuation element that I don't like that just is ever present, right? The only reason we leave the cemetery is because Elena's character has her cut, right? And Steven's like, I can't fucking control myself. Like, I gotta get out of here. This is my toxic trait. Like, if you're bleeding, I gotta be out of the room. But then, like, later in the episode, nearly minutes later, he just shows up at her door and is like, oh yeah, it's a small town. Of course I knew where you were.
That's worse. I'm sorry.
It's
the response to how he knows where he lives is worse than him showing up.
It's such a... To have that in your mind, like, we don't know how old he is in, like, actual years. But, like, for your first response to be like, small town, of course I know where you live, is terrifying. That's an instant... I am going nowhere with you, and please leave my home immediately.
Even a small town is probably still like 30,000 people. That's a lot of homes. You shouldn't know where you are. You shouldn't be able to guess where you are.
He's just going to every door being like, is Elena here? Like, just standing outside of each door for a minute being like,
I can smell her blood.
Do they still do the school directory at this point?
I was just
is that still a thing?
That would be a better excuse at that point of like, oh yeah, of course I fucking know where you live. You're in the school directory just in case. Like, I don't know why we freely gave those out, but like at the same time, sure, why not? That makes a little bit more sense to each of us. Like, anything else that you guys gathered from these two scenes that like make this seem much more like a teen show that happens to have vampires in it rather than like a show that is focused on the vampire action as like our driving force?
Oh, I think in terms of the diner scene, that's a lot of getting to know like the stakes of the town, and by stakes I don't mean vampires. But you get like these interactions between like Vicky and Jeremy, the little brother, where it's like talking about their hookups and him actually liking her, but he's also just her drug dealer. We get to know Matt, who's just our blonde lunk, our token, just blonde lunk of a man who used to date Elena, but they broke up because her parents died. And I know there's more to it, Matt, but I'm begging you to use a little bit more emotional intelligence. There's a lot of trauma she's dealing with right now. It's not that cut and dry, but they use this to kind of get to know how people are reacting to Stefan showing up into town, how these teenagers interact. And I think it's important to make this a show that's about Mystic Falls, and it's not just about vampire lore. It's spending that time with the teens, with Katy Perry Thinking of You blasting in the background, does a lot for setting the scene.
Definitely.
So this isn't our only high school based scene. Or like high school feeling vibe, like high school movie.
Oh, high school
scene.
coded?
Yeah. Because we get two more. We get to go back to school with the rudest history teacher I've ever seen.
Absolutely
in
fucking
my
slamming
life.
those students.
Like the idea that as a history teacher, you look at a child whose parents have died, and you say directly to that human being, I gave you a pass for being a dumbass last year because your parents died, but this year you're done with excuses, is insanity.
And her parents died 4 months ago, which means that they either died like some point in May or late April, I'm guessing. So not that even matters, but it's still, it's like her parents died like right before finals. He's like, I gave you a pass, but now the bullshit's over. Like, buck stops here, kiddo.
Also, one of my favorite lines, "Cute becomes dumb in an instant," was just like absolutely fucking savage.
We've all heard it.
That's
Jeff, Cute becomes dumb in an instant, buddy.
That is going on my tombstone right there. There he lies. Cute became dumb in an instant.
Yeah, I don't think this guy likes teaching.
No, I think this guy needs to be doing something else, anything else. But I did really like the idea of like we set him up as almost like this villain, and then we have the guy who's the oldest man in the room then immediately come in. Yes, the 31-year-old who's playing a 18-year-old who's actually 120 years old for all we know.
Well, they give you a little bit of a clue into how old Stefan is, because they're talking about like a civil war battle in town, and he knows precisely like exactly what the casualty list is, and also like an extra set of like civilian deaths that they didn't originally mention in the class. So he's at least 160 years old.
I genuinely love the idea that you have this man who is giving us small details and small like clues into it, rather than just outright saying, yeah, I've been a vampire for like 500 years.
He tries to play it off by saying you could learn all this at the public library. One great little boost for public libraries, but this is also like the black coffee in the kitchen thing where it's like, listen, you're not doing that. You're in high school.
Is this show secretly a PSA that the government helped produce? Because we get a dare ad. We get additionally a go to and use your public resources and the library ad.
That's what Seventh Heaven felt like.
We basically also get an anti-drinking ad in the next scene when they go to this gigantic school party that's being hosted by the Falls of Mystic Falls.
On a very special Vampire Diaries.
I love scenes like this. I love the cliche
drinking in the woods.
Yeah, the cliche
me too, dude.
high school party scene, like. Because there's a part of me that's just like, yeah, this is obviously something that happens. It is not this mysterious all of the time unless you live in the middle of fucking nowhere. But at the same time, like showing those cliches of this is the person who's too drunk. This is the instance of like you have this guy who's absolutely in love with this girl who's dating a scumbag and then tries to protect her. And then you also have this like, oh, what's going to happen with the hot, mysterious guy? What girl is he going to choose?
Man, drinking in the woods is cool. Like it's just fun as hell. Like this is just we're gonna do a quick ad for drinking beers in the woods. Drink beers in the woods. They're great. I do also like that we're setting up that Bonnie might actually not be full of shit with her grandma's psychic premonitions, where when she touches Elena, she gets like a weird spooky sensation and can see her whole fog crow like cemetery scene from earlier in the evening, which is pretty cool. So it's like, oh, there actually might be something to this, setting up that the supernatural goes just beyond the vampires, which is fun to add that layer to it for sure.
Yeah, and we also get another, let's call it attempted murder in this instance, because as Vicky's storming away drunk off her ass, she gets attacked by this assailant who we haven't seen, but maybe it's Stefan, maybe it's someone else. But they didn't finish the job.
Yeah, they do a good job of like having Stefan do the dumbest thing possible and like backing out of the crowd. So the person is it her brother or her boyfriend? I can't remember precisely who it was.
So the guy that is like trying to help her and
was makes eye contact with Stefan.
Yeah, that is Elena's brother.
That's Jeremy.
Yeah, that's
right.
Sure. Max got that name, and I did not. Or
I've got IMDb up right now.
Hell yeah, dog. Yeah, I think they do a very good job of like, you can tell that it's not Stefan doing everything by how blatantly they try to make it look like it is. Because obviously it's going to be horrible writing if it's actually Stefan doing these things. But I just think they did a great job of like leaving little clues to make people think that Stefan's a bad guy.
But after realizing that there is this, first of all, the ability of some of these teenagers to respond to the idea that one of their classmates is dying and actually organize, while many of them were probably under the influence of alcohol as well as other resources, I was astounded. The organization was simply impeccable. And they even called the cops while half of them were drunk. Absolutely. There's no shot in hell most teenagers are going to call the cops when they know there's underage drinking.
There is a nonchalant amount of drinking beer underage while the cops are investigating an attempted murder, which is a little concerning. But, teens are going to be dumb.
Yeah. Also, I want them to leave alone our number one sponsor, Drinking Beers in the Woods.
There's this great moment where Nina Dobrev's character looks at Jeremy and is like, you see those guys? They're going to handle the problem. It's okay. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this dialogue? How are you? No one talks to their sibling like that, or at least no one that I know. That was insanity. But we do finally meet our assailant. There's an important scene that comes up next to the realization that, the audience, if you are listening to the synopsis, there's not just one vampire. There are two vampires, and they both happen to know each other because they are brothers. I do love that I could immediately tell when the cut was in this scene, because we saw the other brother, then there was a cut, and then we came back to said scene almost immediately. What do we think about vampire fighting, gentlemen? What do we think about seeing this 31-year-old man who's playing an 18-year-old who's playing 60 or plus year old human being?
It's hard to keep up.
Our crew of characters.
Vampire fights are cool as hell. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Give them like a 5-minute allotment every episode to just battle it out.
Vampire fights. People could fly and they could get thrown through walls and they could fall from buildings and they're super strong and there's really no rules and I don't know if they can die or not, so they're just gonna keep punching each other. Yeah, vampire fights rule.
It's like a fight in the Transformers movie.
I also feel like it's sort of like a little bit like a Pokemon fight, because you're just like, oh yeah, they're both Pokemon. But then you find out Damon has like these, he's not only a vampire, he's also like low-key a magician as well. And it sounds like the only reason he has the extra abilities is because he's not, he's drinking human blood as opposed to Stefan, who's drinking squirrel blood, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's also you got like the Twilight thing there, where it's like you've got the entire Cullen family that's survived for generations by only hunting animals. They're like the vegetarian equivalent of the vampire community.
Yeah, it's the oat milk of blood.
And then it's like you've got like the evil vampires in Twilight who are attacking humans, and that's why the Cullens are all mad at them. This is the same thing here, where it's like you've got your protagonist vampire who's a pacifist and eats squirrels, and which also I don't know. I haven't had burgoo before. Maybe it's good vampire burgoo. And then you've got like bad vampires eating humans.
Also, the squirrel population of Mystic Falls must have plummeted once Stefan showed
Yeah,
up.
there's one kook going to city council meetings being like, where are all the squirrels going? Is no one else onto this?
I used to feed
leave
squirrels.
Ted alone. He's crazy.
I used to feed squirrels every day. They disappeared one day. I haven't seen a chipmunk in 20 years. Where the fuck have they all gone?
What are you going to do, Mayor? What are you going to do?
They're bringing environmentalists to do studies on the place because they're just like, we can't figure it out. Everything seems to be fine other than the squirrel population.
It's like the first person who figured out that the bees were going extinct. Like, how did you know that? Are you counting bees? Are you only spending time in places where bees are? How do you know that? We should have looked into that. That person's crazy.
It's this delightful thing that I just had in the back of my head. But there's also a big reveal that we got based off of this interaction. And that is that there is a woman that looked eerily, if not exactly the same as Elena, that was involved in Stefan and Damon's past, named Catherine. And she was alive about 140 years ago in both of their lives, based off of this one photo that we see that was using the first camera that ever was invented, which is okay because it was the 1860s.
There's some pictures of the Civil War. It's grainy, but it's there.
I like the props department person who had to take Nina Dobrev to that place on the boardwalk where you could dress up in old-timey costumes and get sepia photos.
Do we think that there are other photos of Nina Dobrev in sepia where they just said, you know what? Great first take. Have some fun with these next ones.
There's a Wild West one. There's one where she's a buff bodybuilder and Paul Wesley's a bikini girl.
Oh my God.
I always wanted to be the person who works on What We Do in the Shadows and has to come up with all the oil paintings that look like the four main cast members. That sounded like such a fun job.
This is like, oh God. I did love the, hey, this is the why. This is why this girl is so special, sort of thing. That I think was important for us to know. Because if it's just like, if they didn't tell us this in the pilot, then it's sort of like, cool, great, she's different. And that's why we're so into her. But also, as opposed to something like Twilight, we have this opposing figure who is defiant, chaotic, and how are they going to involve themselves in, or maybe put themselves between Elena and Stefan?
Well, and I think it's important because otherwise Elena is just the normal girl. Because it's like everyone around her has something special. Bonnie is clairvoyant. Damon and Stefan are vampires. Jeremy is high. Like everyone has something except for Elena.
And we get one other big reveal at the end, because we did see Vicky potentially died. We go into a hospital, and then as Vicky awakens from what appears to be maybe like a mini coma, maybe she's recovering, there was a lot of blood loss, she just says the word vampire to her brother.
Vampires.
And that is our pilot.
She said she awakened from her coma and said, "Diaries."
And then Just Never Say Never by The Fray starts blasting.
Man. I could have. There's no. look, there's only like 2 phrase songs that you should be having in these TV shows, and they're both really sad. This is
How
not.
much money did that band make from TV licensing in the late aughts?
Oh, someone has a insane beach house in Malibu.
Someone has
from
2
TV show
jet
royalties.
skis from TV show royalties. And one is called Vampire Diaries, and the other is called Grey's Anatomy. And they are just riding high, living on those beach houses, just being like, yeah, that was a fun pilot. Well, gentlemen, that is our pilot. But I'm curious about the two of you. Were there any things that you loved about this pilot that maybe we didn't discuss in more depth?
I've got one more record drop that we didn't talk about. So when Vicky's in the hospital, they use a song by the singer Bat for Lashes, which is important because bats are what vampires are.
Oh, damn it.
Rich, what about you?
I'm just absolutely going back to Mr. Tanner. Mr. Tanner is the teacher who's just like roasting the fuck out of these kids. I want him in every episode now because I would just love to have a character that's so over teaching be part of this.
This might be a bad opinion, but you know what? If teachers just roasted the shit out of you for being wrong and were like slightly funny while doing it, I'd want to be better at school.
I had a teacher like that who would like kind of like make you feel really bad if you were not prepared in class in high school. And I'm like, this is not like the Socratic method. This is not like you're only going to call on 5 of us for a law class. Like this is a non-AP English class. Just calm down. None of us are reading this.
It's not life or death stakes. As far as like things that I loved, one, I love that everyone was wearing clothes that looked like they were from 2009. Like we talked about the jeans, the outfits, the costumes that were used in this show were awesome. Abercrombie and Fitch definitely was really happy that this
Jeff,
existed.
you're talking about it like this is a period piece. Those were just called clothes when they made this.
It is. It's the 4th period piece.
And son of a bitch. And then I actually, like, we talked a little bit about the writing. I thought that there were some really high highs in the writing. There were also things where I got foggy because it was foggy. You know, like there were some moments where this was just really written well, and like you could tell that the flow of the script was good, and I enjoyed that a lot. Max, why are you smiling like that? I feel like you're going to say something mean to me.
I'm never going to get past the fog made me foggy. It's not going to happen. I cannot. I hear you on saying that it has highs, but I will never get past the fog is foggy.
So, all right. With that said, let's talk about wait a minute moments. What was something that stuck out to you? Maybe something that made you say, wait a minute, when watching this pilot?
TV shows. Never stop setting your pilots at the end of summer and filming your pilots in British Columbia in January. Never stop doing it.
Max.
Never stop doing it.
The Vancouver drama scene needs so much more.
So
it is my favorite thing. Please continue to shoot summertime teen dramas in British Columbia in the winter. I want to continue to see people in tiny summer outfits while their breath is showing. Never stop doing it.
So
actively freezing to death.
Let's talk about which show this joins in our Hall of Fame of doing this.
I believe this is the 3rd example of it now.
This
on
is
this
the
podcast.
third example, because we also have Pretty Little Liars. And on top of that, we have Riverdale.
Yep.
Because unfortunately, Secret Life of an American Teenager did film in California. So it unfortunately just can't join that amazing crew.
But if they could afford Vancouver, they would.
But it also, like, it seems like if you are a young adult show that has a cast that is supposed to be in high school, yep, you're filming in Canada, and yes, it is going to be cold as shit when you're wearing all this stuff.
It just reminds me of the 30 Rock episode where Jenna's filming like a vampire movie that they're shooting in Iceland. So they only have 1 minute of darkness to shoot every day.
Rich, I'm curious from your perspective. Were there any wait a minute moments for you?
So I have 2. Number 1, the phrase, "Can I still say tranny mess?" is a fucking insane line to put in that script because you're not clever for saying like oh, we can't say that. You wrote that in a script. It made it to the final edit. You didn't have to fucking do that.
So
It's just like blatantly stupid. What do you got, Jeff?
I think this is how do we modernize this 1990s book? Because right before this show probably started filming, it was the 4th season of Project Runway, where Christian Siriano, who won that show, was just throwing that word out like it was fucking candy on Halloween.
Well, this is definitely not rooted in the books apart from plot points, because there's a lot of reference. They could not have predicted Barack Obama and Heath Ledger when this book was written.
No, they definitely did.
Sure, they did.
They were.
There's this young smart kid out of Occidental College. I think he's got something.
There's a 10-year-old boy in Perth, Australia.
Yeah. And he's gonna win an Oscar, but he's not gonna be there to get it. For myself.
I have one more.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm begging people. Stop being upset that crazy shit happens in a town that's called Mystic Falls. You knew what you were you knew what you were fucking signing up for. You don't have a calm life in Mystic Falls. There are crows everywhere. You're hanging out in a cemetery. Just what are you doing? This is like crazy shit is going to happen. These people, like, it's so hard for me to believe that there are people who are willingly living in Mystic Falls.
All right, I'm gonna get a little unhinged here with mine. So follow me on this journey. TV producers and executives, stop bad naming or like bad mouthing crows. Crows are great. Crows
They're so smart.
They're so smart. Crows are there are crows. There are studies shown that crows will put nuts into the road for cars to run over them so that they can eat the inside of a nut. Why are we vilifying this genius animal because they're black? Do a raven. Fuck. There's a poem about ravens being like these terrifying animals. Let the crows be. Let them be.
It's Disney's fault. Dumbo gave crows a bad rap for an entire century.
I definitely thought you were going to say Hitchcock. I was not expecting you to say Dumbo.
It's that elephant's fault.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. Well, we do also have an in-flight question. We actually got a couple of in-flight questions for this episode.
Thanks for sending those in.
And thank you so much for those. Gentlemen, here's the question. Vampire's toxic trait is smelling blood, which makes them go crazy. What toxic trait do you have?
Being upset that traffic exists. That's a pretty stupid one while living in Los Angeles. There's too many people living here, and I'm one of those too many people.
Max, what about you?
Oh gosh, I can only listen to things on even volumes. It really drives me insane if anything's ever on an odd volume level.
What?
I can't do it. I can't listen to things on odd volumes.
Have you told me this before? That's that's such a weird thing.
That's the most OCD habit I've ever heard in my life.
Why?
Yeah, I'm toxic. Don't mess with me.
not even 5s and 10s. It has to be like a 2, 4, 6, 8.
Also,
10's an even number.
I know
that, but what about a 5s?
5's an odd number. No.
Oh, God damn it.
I'm also going to say that is not Stefan's most toxic trait. His most toxic trait is just showing up at wherever Elena is and staring at her and not saying shit. That's toxic as hell.
I would say so.
For myself, I have this urge in the back of my head that shows up. If I'm ever walking on a sidewalk and someone just stops and stares either up or like looks in a window display, I have this urge to punch them in the back of the head so much. You are holding up traffic. Stop. Don't do that. Don't sit in the middle of the sidewalk because you are making everyone's life harder. We have places to fucking be. And you're
Jeff would do well in New York.
Like, this is something that I genuinely there should be a rule. If you stop, I get to shove you. Like that's the rule. It's not even a push in the head. I get to shove you in the side. And like, I'm not going to shove you into the street. I'll shove you towards the display that you're staring at like a dumbass, so you can be even closer to
No window
to it
shopping,
and look
says
at it
Jeff.
even nicer. But thank you for that lovely unhinged question.
Which we're all super honest about, and we have no more toxic traits more toxic than that.
Oh my god. Well, let's talk a little bit about the legacy of this show. This show was on for 8 seasons and 171 episodes.
God damn.
That is a lot. We talked a little bit about the age of this cast. I do just want to say the problem with having a cast and you say that they're teenagers or you say that they don't age because they're vampires is after 8 seasons, people age a little bit. So that's a problem with casting. Hypothetically, a 26 and a 31-year-old to be these unaging people because by the end of it, you know, they're in their mid-30s or 40. The show topped off as far as ratings because we have to remember this is CW. With its first season averaged 3.6 million viewers. The season premiere of this show, because CW poured a ton of dollars for marketing into it, had about 4.27. So it didn't really have that much of a drop off from the premiere to the rest of the season, which is very admirable. But because it is a cable television show being on CW, it only topped off at about 116th of all TV shows. But all of that said, it was the most viewed show up until that point of time for CW/Warner Brothers until Arrow, the Arrowverse started, the DC comic. So there was a spinoff of the show. We did not meet any of the characters of that spinoff, but that is called The Originals. That debuted in 2013. There also was a comic book series for this show that they made because of the popularity of it.
Damn.
And DC Comics picked that up and ran with it. So there was no DVDs that I could find of this show, which is a rarity and a first, but you can find it basically on any streaming network. Like it's on Max, it's on Peacock, I think it's on Prime as well. Go and have some fun based off of the subscriptions you have. But I have a game of the week, gentlemen.
You have a game of the week.
I have a game of the week, and it comes to
I have a game of the week.
Oh, shit.
I am Spartacus. It comes to the awards and nominations for this show. This show has 114 different award nominations that it received during its 8 seasons and 39 wins. Can you two gentlemen name me the 4 bodies that they won awards from?
Oh, Teen Choice.
That's 1.
Kid's Choice.
That is not 1.
Ooh,
People's Choice.
That's 2.
Critics' Choice.
The last 2 are a little bit more difficult, so I'll end the silence because that's great podcasting. And the other 2 were the Young Hollywood Awards. And then the final one was the MTV Fandom Awards, which is that small period of time where MTV was like, people don't care about TV anymore, so we're going to name them Fandom, so we can do the movie awards and the TV awards at the same time.
Okay.
But yeah, that is where all of their awards came from.
A lot of surfboards and golden popcorns.
Where do you put, after you get one surfboard, where do you put the other surfboards? This is a question.
That would be a prominent, like a fixture on my wall. If I won an MTV surfboard, that's awesome.
No, but
it's
Rich,
the only award that you keep on top of your car.
Rich, you have let's just say, you know, we go a few years in the future. Congratulations, you've won your first surfboard, which I think is that the MTV Awards? Is it whatever?
It's a Teen Choice.
The Teen Choice Award. You have a surfboard. Let's say that show's doing really well, and you win 3 more surfboards. Where are all those surfboards going?
In a rack on top of my car.
Rich is always ready to go to the beach in LA. Well, that is the history of this show. Rich, what is your game of the week?
So I decided to break from my pretty recent pattern of just doing 3 trivia questions for you and go back to a J.W. Crump original. We're going to play a little game of Faker's Dozen. Because obviously my wait a minute moment was about the town name of Mystic Falls. So I wanted to give you guys a list of other sinister town names, and I wanted to see if you can figure out which one is not real. So obviously Faker's Dozen, there are 12 real ones and one not real one that I made up. And for those listening at home, I have sent out a chat to all of them. I'll just read them off right now. We have Frankenstein, Missouri, Devil's Den, Wyoming, Cutoff, Louisiana, Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, Headless, North Dakota, Bad Axe, Michigan, Slaughter Beach, Delaware, Accident, Maryland, which made me giggle, Savage, Minnesota, Two Guns, Arizona, Transylvania, Louisiana, Dead Woman Crossing, Oklahoma, and Seven Devils, North Carolina.
Okay.
Max, alrighty, I'm just gonna go for it here, and I'm gonna say that we're just gonna go with Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina.
All right, and I will say that Cutoff, Louisiana is my guess.
Both of those are real towns. The actual answer that I made up was Headless, North Dakota. But yeah, if you want to take a little trip to Accident, Maryland, or Dead Woman Crossing, Oklahoma, or Bad Axe, Michigan, or Slaughter Beach, Delaware, you really can go do a full U.S. tour.
I just can't imagine, and I apologize to the people who live here. Imagine living in Accident, Maryland, and just being like, "Yeah, where are you from?" Accident.
There is a name for the people who come from Accident, Maryland. It is accidentals.
And you didn't even include Hell, Michigan on here.
I removed it because there are too many other good ones. I know Hell, Michigan is pretty famous because their Halloween part, their like whole town Halloween get together or something like that.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
I like that.
Well, Rich, thank you for your game of the week, and thanks to JW for that amazing concept of the Faker's Dozen. But I have two questions for the two of you. And the first is, based off of the pilot, would you continue watching this show? And my second question, we're going to go a little bit different, because this show only recently went off the air, right? I'm not going to say, let's bring it back. But instead, do you think that there's a space for something like this on the air? CW recently just got out of their Arrowverse era where they had just a bunch of superheroes. Maybe they want to dive back into this mysterious supernatural space. Max, I'm curious from your perspective, what are you thinking?
For the third week in a row, unfortunately, I'm sipping on an ice-cold haterade, and I have to say it's a no for me to continue watching this show. I just honestly, I think it's a little melodramatic. The dialogue fell a little bit flat for me. It's just not something that I could see myself wanting to sink my teeth into. As for, could I see space for a show like this? Absolutely. I think that teen drama, teen romance plus supernatural is always going to be ripe for the picking. I think about Diablo Cody's Lisa Frankenstein that just came out in theaters and got a wide release. Obviously just like supernatural plus teen romance. It's a tale as old as time. We've seen so many examples. I think we'll continue to see examples of it. Just not this one for me personally.
Rich, what about you?
So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stick with Max, who's out for blood on this one, and I'm also gonna say no. I would not watch another episode of this. I will say, like, this is not. I am not the target demo for this. Obviously, this is
no way. No,
it's a massively popular show.
You're 18. This is perfect for you.
I'm aging out. This show is just not and I can't really like judge it based on from the perspective of a teenager. So I really do think that it's just not going to ever be for me. However, I see the value in it for kids who are tuning in. It's also in the vein of capturing the Twilight craze, which was very important to a lot of people that I know in this moment in time. But yeah, I'm not feeling it for me. And I think if they were going to fill this space a little bit more, I personally would need to see something that's a little bit more adventurous for vampire lore. I don't think that this is like, I mean, I love What We Do in the Shadows, which we mentioned several times. I love True Blood. Both of those take vampire lore and grow a massive universe outside of it, and also have like very interesting takes on like what it means to be a vampire in like modern times. And there's like a political element to True Blood. But yeah, I just think there needs to be a little bit more creativity with how they're interpreting vampire lore for me to watch. What about you, Jeff? Jeff's already finished the first season.
Okay, so in all honesty to this question, or to the questions that I posed to you two gentlemen, based off of the pilot, 100% I'm watching one more, at least. I want to see if, I think that this pilot and like the purpose of the show that we continue to talk about is, the idea of this podcast is watch a pilot and see if you'd watch another. Yep, I would watch another because I am just, they have struck my curiosity as far as what's the deal with Catherine? Is Nina Dobrev going to be in like a Parent Trap situation where we see two Nina Dobrevs? Because that's twice the fun. Is one of them going to be an ultra serious Nina Dobrev while Elena's the quirky, like dopey one? And like, yeah, I want all of that. As far as if I think that this show belongs on TV now, Rich, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that there are better stories to be told than this one when it comes to vampires. A great example, and a show that I know you didn't include, but is really great if you haven't watched it, is AMC's Interview with a Vampire series. Is a really fantastic retelling of that movie in a little bit of a different sense with some skews on it that's just beautifully done. What We Do in the Shadows coming to its final season, unfortunately, but just another really creative way of not just like, oh yeah, hot, sexy vampires. Like sometimes we need comedy vampires, right? Or we need like, there's
to be fair, there's more sex in that show than any of the other vampire shows.
There's so much sex, and it's so great. Like that's not me saying that I need shows to have sex in them, but it doesn't hurt. So as far as the this show
Jeff
goes,
just got his new job at HBO.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Bring me on, Big Z. Please bring me on the
Big Z. Oh God,
Big Z. Let's go. So yeah, I think that this show being available as much as it is on streaming, you don't need to have it on TV. You don't have to have a version like this on TV. Go back and watch it. There are 171 episodes of it. And hey, if you want to stop at some point, no one told you have to watch all 171. Stop when it gets a little bit weird. And then you can say, let's watch something else. Well, that is our flight, gentlemen. And we have come to a land. But before we go, where can our frequent flyers and new folks who have just joined us for this flight find you? Rich, where can folks find you?
You can find me drinking a bunch of black coffee with 16-year-olds. And also, you can find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich. You can find me, I'm not changing it. You can find original sketch comedy from Max and myself on TikTok at Dadwagon Comedy.
Max, what about you?
You can find me drinking beers in the woods by a fire. Beers in the woods. Drink them. You can find me on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
And you can find me roasting the hell out of teenagers in a high school history class. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. You can find the TV Pilot's License anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as YouTube and social media at TV Pilot's License. If you have a question about the show or for our next episode, you can email us at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for our Instagram for sneak previews of some of our upcoming episodes. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then,
the fog is making me foggy. Oh.
No. Put some Transylvania on that, Rich.
Good night, everybody.